All right, we're now going to welcome in Ronan O'Shea, our men's basketball beat reporter. Ronan, I see you're wearing a Peyton Manning jersey. I love it, but what's going on with that?
Well, it doesn't really fit too nice. I really don't like it at all, but I am making my part of the bet come true. If you looked at the Hoosier Sports Night Daily Update last week, associate producer Matt DeBolt and I put a little bet on the line. I was pulling for the Bears. He was going for the Colts. Of course, the Colts won the game. But before we move on, just a couple thoughts on the game. You just, as a Bears fan, have to tip your cap to the Colts. They played better football from start to finish. But if you are a Bears fan, yes, it's bitter initially, but a lot to build off. It was a good year. Rex Grossman has built and learned from it, and I think they're going to be just fine, and I can't wait to get this thing off.
Well, he definitely sounds like a Cubs fan as well, but we'll move on to Indiana men's basketball. Ronan, talk about IU being undefeated at home this season and what that means to the record.
Well, it's big for the team, of course, to defend home court, especially in the Big Ten Conference right now, where there's a lot of teams playing good basketball here towards the midpoint of the season. You want to be able to play well at home. But I think more importantly, it represents the change which has occurred under Coach Kelvin Sampson. There's a couple things that you need to do to be loved down here on campus. Beat up Purdue, win a national championship, and of course win at home. If Indiana can pull out just only a couple more games against Minnesota and Penn State at Assembly Hall, it'll be the first time that they're undefeated at home since 1994. Coach Davis was able to have 2 one-loss seasons, but it would just represent a change in time here at Indiana. It's big for the team. It's time Assembly Hall comes back as one of the most difficult places to win at in the country, and at least Coach Sampson and this hard-nosed defense is making their stamp in the Big Ten.
Well, obviously Indiana's good at home, but they've had a couple tough road losses in Big Ten play. Talk about their upcoming road schedule and how important it is to get a couple of those wins.
Well, without question, if you can win a couple of these big road games at Purdue, at Michigan State, you secure yourself a third-place finish in the Big Ten Conference and probably a 4th seed or so in March Madness. But the road ahead isn't pretty at all. You look ahead to Wednesday night against Purdue. This is a team very hungry for a win against Indiana. They were embarrassed, of course, at that game last month here at Assembly Hall. And this is a young team. Their only home loss this year to Ohio State. Michigan, this is a tall, lanky, athletic team, played very competitive against Indiana at our Assembly Hall. Having 2 straight road games, 2 in the conference, is going to be a tough tear on some of the young guys on this Indiana team. And then you look ahead to Michigan State. Again, the only team that they lost to at home was Ohio State, and this is a team trying to secure a spot later on in March. It's going to be a very tough road. You also can't overlook the game at Northwestern. They're hungry for some type of success in the Big Ten Conference, but it's not going to be easy. The thing, though, that you like, and we've talked about this so many times this year, Chris, is that Indiana has played some tough road games this year, and they've started to win them. You look at the loss at Duke, the loss at Kentucky. They turned around and won a very tough game at UConn. I think they're prepared for this tough stretch in February.
Okay, Ronan. Well, a lot of people have talked about the Big Ten this year being down, but they have 2 teams in the top 5. Are they really that down?
No, definitely not. You look at this Big Ten Conference, like you said, you've got 2 of the best teams in the country with Ohio State and with Wisconsin. Then you've got these sort of teams somewhere in the middle. Michigan State starting to play better basketball of late. The Illinois team that we saw this Saturday and even 2 weeks ago at Illinois is not the same team that got blown out earlier in the year at home against Ohio State. The conference is coming together. It's very competitive. Iowa's making a serious push for postseason play. Same thing with Purdue. I just think that people look at this conference as not very good because, one, you've got 2 very good teams with Ohio State and Wisconsin, and number 2, nobody expected this type of season out of Indiana, and I think there's too many people out there who still doesn't realize that this is a very competitive basketball team.
All right, last thing before we move on to football. Lance Stemler now. Coach Kelvin Sampson says he's happy with Lance at this point, although he's not making shots. He's still playing good defense and still getting some rebounds. What's your take on this?
Well, like we said last time on the program, Lance Stemler is having serious confidence issues. He's a good shooter, he's a good defender, but he's putting up the shot. It just doesn't look right coming out of his hands. I mean, Chris, I can recall sitting at that game the other day. It looks like he's throwing darts at the rim. Those shots aren't going to fall. But Coach Sampson's very supportive of the junior. He's keeping him out on the basketball court because his defense really hasn't been affected too much by it. He's one of the better, relatively bigger bodies that they have on the defensive side of the ball, and I just got a feeling, and I hope that he can find his shot at some point soon. He put up 12 points, if you recall, against Michigan late in January, so he is starting to maybe put things together. We'll see where he can go, though, from there.
Okay, last thing before we let you go. Let's move on to football here for a minute. Big signing day last week. Indiana got some pretty good recruits, but they missed out on Jeremy Finch, the 5-star guy from Warren Central. He decided to go to Florida. Overall, will you kind of rate this class, and was it disappointing losing Finch?
Oh, without question, Chris, it hurts losing what many people have said is probably the #1 safety in the country. But if you look at who they lost him to, Florida, the defending national champions, he was also looking at Michigan. The fact that Indiana was competitive for an in-state recruit with the national champs and with Michigan is a good sign of things to come. This is an interesting recruiting class, though, and I'll get to more on that in a moment. They've got 5 3-star recruits coming in. Jeff Boyd, the big defensive tackle to keep an eye on, and they've got a lot of quick, smaller guys. The thing that Coach Hepner talked about so much last year is Indiana doesn't have speed. They went out and brought in some guys that have a lot of speed. Also mentioned that because Indiana, 1, hasn't made a bowl game since 1993, and 2, you've got to battle teams like Purdue and Notre Dame with regards to in-state recruits, Indiana needs to approach recruiting like a lot of MAC schools. Go out and try to find the Garrett Wolves like Northern Illinois has been very effective at doing. It's this type of recruiting class that'll be interesting. Not a lot of big names, but a lot of quick, smart, athletic players. You may get some surprises. I just also want to throw out with regards to football, the backup quarterback last year, Blake Powers, who started the season as the #1, moving to tight end. So you can figure with him, a good arm at the tight end position, and Kellen Lewis, of course, the sophomore quarterback next year, there can be some trick plays up Coach Hepner's sleeve.
All right, Ronan, thanks. Good stuff as always. And keep wearing that Colts jersey. It's a good look for you. But right now we're going to take a quick break here on Hoosier Sports Night. We'll have some wrestling updates right after this.